Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Bite-Sized Book of Mormon. I'm glad to have you with me. So, if you've never been here before, this is just a podcast where I read through one chapter of the Book of Mormon each episode, and to give a little bit of context, a little bit of insight, a little bit of good times. So, stick around. So, if you remember last episode, we read Alma chapter 20, which was a really cool chapter because it kind of was the transition between Ammon's story and the story of him and his brethren. So, basically, Ammon and King Lamoni go on a trip, and his father intercepts him and tries to get Ammon killed, but Ammon makes the best of the situation and lets the king off, and they end up going to where they're going to go and freeing his homies from prison. And then the king is like, by the way, come back. You had some pretty cool ideas I want to learn more about. So anyways, let's see where that goes. That was a very cool chapter. So actually, the next few chapters from this chapter all the way through chapter 25 is going to be kind of a point of view switch. So lately we've been in the point of view of Ammon and his preaching. And now we're going to switch to the point of view of Aaron and Mulukai and other brethren, because those are the ones that Ammon actually freed from prison last chapter. So now we're going to kind of see how they got to prison and then what happened after Ammon freed them from prison and how they kind of re-met up. So yeah, we're going to kind of be scooching around today. So anyways, yeah, I think without further ado, let's read Alma chapter 21. Now when Ammon and his brethren separated themselves in the borders of the land of the Lamanites, behold, Aaron took his journey towards the land which was called by the Lamanites Jerusalem, calling it after the land of their father's nativity, and it was away, joining the borders of Mormon. Now the Lamanites and the Amalekites and the people of Ammon had built a great city, which was called Jerusalem. Now the Lamanites themselves were sufficiently hardened, but the Amalekites and the Ammonites were still harder, because they did cause the Lamanites that they should harden their hearts, that they should wax strong in wickedness and their abominations. So I just want to give a little bit of context. So if you remember, the Amalekites and the Ammonites are actually Nephite defectors to the Lamanites. So they used to be believers, they used to have the gospel, but they left it intentionally to join the Lamanites. They're kind of a new kind of wicked that is more wicked, I would argue, than the Lamanites themselves. Because again, the Lamanites kind of have the excuse of being ignorant. Like, they've never truly been taught the gospel. They don't know what they're missing out on. They don't know what they're fighting against. But the Nephite defectors, the Ammonites and the Amalekites that are part of this people that built the city of Jerusalem, they know what they left, and they left it on purpose. They know what they're rebelling against. So they have a lot more anger for the Nephites. So anyways, I need you to understand that is why Aaron had a hard time in this area, because he was preaching to people that already knew what he was going to say and left that gospel on purpose, which is a whole different kind of person than the people that Ammon was teaching. And it came to pass that Aaron came to the city of Jerusalem, and first began to preach to the Amalekites. And he began to preach to them in their synagogues, for they had built synagogues after the order of the Nehors. For many of the Amalekites and the Ammonites were after the order of the Nehors. Therefore, as Aaron entered into one of their synagogues to preach unto the people, and as he was speaking unto them, behold, there arose an Amalekite, and began to contend with him, saying, What is that thou hast testified? Hast thou seen an angel? Why do not angels appear unto us? Behold, are not this people as good as thy people? Thou also sayest, Except we repent, we shall perish. How knowest thou the thought and intent of our hearts? How knowest thou that we have cause to repent? How knowest thou that we are not a righteous people? Behold, we have built sanctuaries, and we do assemble ourselves together to worship God. We do believe that God will save all men. So this is really interesting here. So clearly, all the people of Ammon and Amalekite, they left on purpose from the Nephite religion. But they still consider themselves religious in the same way that the Nephites are. They still consider themselves righteous. Because they didn't leave religion altogether, they are not godless people, they left it for the order of Nehor. So they believe in a different god than the Nephites do. Because if you remember all the way back when Nehor was first introduced, he started screwing around in Zarahemla, starting to sow a little bit of chaos. His preaching was basically, you don't need to worry about what you do in this life. God will save all of us. How could a loving God not save everyone? That would be insane. And so it doesn't matter what you do on this earth, God is going to save you. So it's almost like an anti-religion, because the very essence of religion is that it asks you to act in a certain way, that it asks some sort of sacrifice of you. But what Nehor pitched was that kind of eat, drink, and be merry mindset. Like, you can do whatever you want. God is going to save you. And in fact, that is directly reflected at the end of verse 6, because the Amalekite that's talking to Aaron says, we do believe that God will save all men. So yeah, they still carry that original Nehorian belief that they don't really need to stress about all the stuff that the Nephites are stressing about, which that view rings relatable to me. Like, I've certainly heard that argument in my lifetime. Not necessarily by other Christians, mainly by atheists, but still, it is something that we Christians have to grapple with, the fact that not all of us are going to be saved. I mean, it's my opinion that the LDS view of heaven is a lot more merciful than a lot of other Christian heavens, but still, we do need to grapple with the fact that God is going to punish some of his own children that presumably he loves unconditionally. And so that is the arguments that Aaron kind of has to fight against here. Like, they aren't just ignorant, they know who God is, they know generally what Aaron is going to say, and they have arguments against it. That is why they left. And so Aaron is given a unique challenge here to kind of fight against these ideas that Nehor planted in the hearts of some people in Zarahemla so many years ago. Now Aaron said unto him, Believest thou that the Son of God shall come to redeem mankind from their sins? And the man said unto him, We do not believe that thou knowest any such thing. We do not believe in these foolish traditions. We do not believe that thou knowest of things to come. Neither do we believe that thy fathers and also that our fathers did know concerning the things which they spake, of that which is to come. Now Aaron began to open the scriptures unto them concerning the coming of Christ, and also concerning the resurrection of the dead, and that there could be no redemption for mankind, save it were through the death and sufferings of Christ, and the atonement of his blood. And it came to pass, as he began to expound these things unto them, they were angry with him, and began to mock him, and they would not hear the words which he spake. Therefore, when he saw that they would not hear his words, he departed out of their synagogue, and came over to a village which is called Anti, and there he found Molokai preaching the word unto them, and also Alma and his brethren, and they contended with many about the word. So something that I want to point out is in verse 8, which is kind of when the nameless Amalekite that Aaron's talking with replies to him and goes, We don't believe in Christ. We don't believe we need a redemption. We don't believe that you believe those things. We think that you are lying. We think that our fathers who believe that were lying. We don't believe that they knew what they were talking about. So they don't even see Aaron as honest at all. So that also kind of adds to the fact that Aaron is having such a hard time getting through to these people, because they are approaching him from bad faith. They're biased against him already. So, yeah, Aaron's going through it. And then immediately he sees, okay, I've spoken the scriptures to these people, I've taught them, they're not even going to try to listen to me, so I'm just going to leave. And then he meets up with some of his brethren, and he watches them also preaching to these people. So I guess let's see how productive these guys are once they're not in the land that Aaron was in. Maybe they'll be more successful outside in a different village. But yeah, so Aaron kind of hit a wall with trying to preach to some Nephite dissenters. He was really given a tall order there, and he tried his best, honestly. And it came to pass that they saw that the people would harden their hearts. Therefore they departed and came over into the land of Middoni, and they did preach the word unto many, and few believed on the words which they taught. Nevertheless, Aaron and a certain number of his brethren were taken and cast into prison, and the remainder of them fled out of the land of Middoni unto the regions round about. And those who were cast into prison suffered many things, and they were delivered by the hand of Lamoni and Ammon, and they were fed and clothed. And they went forth again to declare the word, and thus they were delivered for the first time out of prison, and thus they had suffered. And they went forth whithersoever they were led by the Spirit of the Lord, preaching the word of God in every synagogue of the Amalekites, or in every assembly of the Lamanites where they could be admitted. And it came to pass that the Lord began to bless them, insomuch that they brought many to the knowledge of the truth. Yea, they did convince many of their sins, and of the traditions of their fathers, which were not correct. So they are having kind of more success now that they've been broken out of prison by Ammon and King Lamoni. So good for them. They are actually converting people. They're helping people realize that, how they're living is not really good. But also, this is not super doctrinal, but just a neat detail that I want to point out is in verse 16, where it talks about how they preached in every synagogue of the Amalekites and every gathering or assembly of the Lamanites. Obviously, the Amalekites, the Ammonites, the Lamanites, they're all separate people because they come from different places. They follow different people. Like the Amalekites and the Ammonites, they're obviously from the Nephites originally, and the Lamanites, I'm sure they've been Lamanites for a lot longer than the Ammonites or the Amalekites have been. So, anyways, different people, it's kind of interesting. But as we know, the Amalekites are not non-religious. They have a god, they have a conception of God, but they believe that he acts much differently than the Nephite god does. And so they have synagogues. Like, they have churches, they do assemble themselves together, and they do worship in some manner. And so it's interesting that it specifically says they went to Amalekite synagogues and Lamanite assemblies, because the Amalekites do have some type of religion, but the Lamanites do not. They just assemble themselves for, I guess, other events. The Lamanites, I hesitate to call them godless, because, clearly not all Lamanites are horrible, awful people, and that's kind of the implication that the word has, but they are technically godless in the fact that they don't really have a universal religion that they all practice in a similar way. So, I don't know, it's kind of an interesting thing. We all tend to lump the Amalekites and the Ammonites into the Lamanites because they're all wicked, and then we all kind of tend to keep these people in one box as opposed to, remembering the nuance that they are in fact different people and they come from different places. But yeah, it's just kind of cool to see that they have distinct beliefs from the Lamanites around them, and they see themselves as righteous. If you remember in verse 6, that one Amalekite that was talking to Aaron said, "How knowest thou that we are not a righteous people?" So he argues that they are righteous. So they have a much different view of themselves than the Lamanites do. Because the Lamanites, they don't think that they're awful people. They think they're kind of doing, kind of what's been done. But the Amalekites see themselves as actively righteous. And they see themselves as worshiping and praising the correct God. So, I don't know, it's kind of a whole different ballgame. It's really interesting to kind of remember the amount of variety there is among the Lamanites. And it came to pass that Ammon and Lamoni returned from the land of Middoni to the land of Ishmael, which was the land of their inheritance. And King Lamoni would not suffer that Ammon should serve him or be his servant. But he caused that there should be synagogues built in the land of Ishmael, and he caused that his people, or the people who were under his reign, should assemble themselves together. And he did rejoice over them, and he did teach them many things. And he did also declare unto them that they were a people who were under him, and that they were a free people, that they were free from the oppressions of the king, his father, for that his father had granted unto him that he might reign over the people who were in the land of Ishmael, and in all the land round about. And he also declared unto them that they might have the liberty of worshipping the Lord their God according to their desires, in whatsoever place they were in, if it were in the land which is under the reign of King Lamoni. And Ammon did preach unto the people of King Lamoni, and it came to pass that he did teach them all things concerning things pertaining to righteousness, and he did exhort them daily with all diligence, and they gave heed unto his word, and they were zealous for keeping the commandments of God. Wow, the people of King Lamoni are zealous. That's amazing. Dude, Ammon really got lucky, not only with the people that he chose to teach, but also with his strategy and how effective it was. My gosh, that was so cool. So it's kind of interesting to compare and contrast the experience of Ammon, who had a very smooth experience and he really had really high success among the Lamanites, to Aaron, who basically beat his head against the wall that is the Amalekites and the Ammonites in their own synagogues. They would not listen. They would not change their views. They saw themselves as unequivocally right. And so they were a lot more difficult to teach because they were unwilling to budge. They already had beliefs about God and they did not want them to be replaced. I do like how Mormon chose to keep in this chapter, because he could have taken it out, but I think it really demonstrates that the sons of Mosiah were not 100% effective. They were not miraculous missionaries. They did not, work miracles across the entire continent. Ammon did, and his story is amazing and inspiring, but Aaron didn't. And Aaron is still just as good a missionary as Ammon is. He has no control over the hearts of the people that he's teaching. If he teaches them the word and they don't listen, that's not up to him. Aaron is still just as blessed for doing God's missionary work as Ammon is, even though he probably did not convert a single Amalekite. I mean, he might have, but probably very few. Especially compared to the people of King Lamoni, which seems now to be like a religious country, which is really cool. Like an independent country. So anyways, pretty neat. But yeah, I do like the difference between Aaron and Ammon, and the fact that Aaron isn't written as a worse missionary. He's written as a persistent missionary who believes in what he's teaching and he cares about the people he's teaching to, but the people he's teaching to don't care about him. And then, even when he leaves that city that he was in and he joins his other brethren, and then eventually he gets taken out of prison by Ammon and King Lamoni, even after that, they do have some success, but it's not sweeping success like Ammon had. And yet, his work is still 100% valid and loved by God. He still gets the same blessings that Ammon does for doing God's work and spreading the gospel. that's why I think this chapter is important, because it shows that not every missionary is successful, even though they try their hardest. They do not have control over the agency of those that they're teaching. If we forced people that we taught to believe, then it wouldn't really be agency, would it? So, yeah, I don't know. That's why I like this chapter. So the standout verse is going to be verse 12, which says, "And it came to pass that they saw that the people would harden their hearts. Therefore they departed and came over into the land of Middoni, and they did preach the word unto many, and few believed on the words which they taught." So even after Aaron leaves kind of the hotbed of Ammonites and Amalekites and Lamanites, that whole mixture, that city that he was in before Jerusalem, he left and now he's in Middoni, and still the very last sentence of this verse says, "Few believed on the words which they taught." So even though he wasn't banging his head against the really extremely hard-hearted Amalekites and Ammonites, his missionary efforts still weren't 100% effective. Like, he still wasn't Ammon. He still wasn't Alma and Amulek. And yet, again, this chapter does not diminish his efforts. It, in fact, extols them. It praises him for being so persistent. And I really like that. How it specifically points out his teachings were not received, but it doesn't word that as he was a bad missionary. It's worded as these people had hard hearts and they didn't listen to him. I like that detail. And I think that this verse really encapsulates kind of the theme of the chapter, which I already mentioned is, even if your missionary work is less effective, it's still valid and good in the eyes of God. This is a similar lesson to when Alma almost left Ammonihah when he was preaching there and he got kicked out. And then God sends an angel who says, "Blessed art thou. Good job. Now go back." Return to the land of Ammonihah. And what happens? As soon as he returns, he meets Amulek. And then, the rest is history. But Alma was just as blessed for the work that he did before he met Amulek as he was for the work that he did after he found Amulek. He was preaching the same words with the same amount of effort and zeal. It was just the agency of the people that was just not having it. So, again, same lesson here. Aaron was trying, and he was doing good work, and his work was pleasing to God, but that doesn't mean it was effective. Pleasing to God and effective and productive, that is not the same thing. It doesn't have to be the same thing. So anyways, when you are either on your mission, like actively black tagged up, or if you're just casually preaching the gospel to whoever will listen, or if you just, send a verse to a friend or whatever, even if nothing comes of it, God still appreciates the effort. So whatever you do in the service of God, he appreciates, whether or not the people who are receiving it care. So yeah, that was a very good chapter. I really like this chapter because it's kind of an overlooked chapter, because it basically just details the failings of Aaron and how hard his life was for a while. But I really like it. So yeah, there's just a few links down in the show notes that I want to kind of go over. Firstly, there's a Let Me Know You Learned link, so if you want to message me there, you can. You can also DM me on Instagram if you want. Secondly, if you don't have your own copy of the Book of Mormon, but you want to read along, there is some digital copies linked down below, so you can go ahead and, again, read along for yourself, or just find a verse or a chapter that you really like. Thirdly, there's a super quick support the show link, so if you want to shoot me a few dollars and support what I do, I would greatly appreciate that. And we're also on YouTube, so if you want to go and subscribe to the YouTube channel, you will find some little bonus content, you will find trivia polls, etc. And yeah, the podcast also gets posted there twice a week, so go ahead and subscribe there if you haven't already. Also, if you're coming from YouTube, hello, nice to meet you. How's it going? And finally, we are on Instagram as of very recently. So if you want to go and follow me there on Instagram, you will find not only episode announcements and standout verses and trivia polls on the story, you will find meme reels. Because lately I've been filming goofy little Book of Mormon reels. So I hope you go on there and you enjoy them, because I have fun making them. So anyways, follow me there. I hope to find you there. And yeah, that's all I got for you today. I'll talk to you later. Bye.